August. Wow. I mean, this is really something. Why did you decide to tackle a novel?
Oh, it's something I had wanted to do for a long time. And it had always been there in the background. I was always kind of a storyteller in different ways, even as a child, but I think when I became a filmmaker, then I got to tell my stories. And that was just one way to do it. But I always thought a novel would be a cool thing to do. I was busy. I was raising a child. I had a family. I was a filmmaker,
Yeah.
the time to write a novel wasn't really there. But also, it's kind of one of those things that you have to make time for. And so I thought about it. I was one of those people that says, I'm going to write a novel one day and never got around to doing it for decades. So, but what inspired me was a couple of things. I read Stephen King's book called On Writing. And he talks about writing, he talks about his process, he talks about a lot of things, his accident, many things. It's a fascinating book. But one of the things he said was just how it was sort of his process. Dive into a story, put a couple of characters in a situation and let them tell the story. Now that sounds like a very strange approach, but it actually worked. And I thought of this situation, this kind of premise for a novel. I wasn't sure if it was a novel. I didn't really know what novels, how you start a novel. So I just put these characters in a situation like he said, and I wrote a novel in their voices. And it was kind of a premise where this guy he's been in a car accident. He's trapped in the front seat of the car, and there's a girl trapped in the trunk. How is she in the trunk? What's happening? Who are these two people? And he starts talking. She starts talking, and then they start talking to each other. We realize they know each other. They're both trapped. And it goes back in time to look at their life, their relationship, how they got here. It's kind of a mystery, but it's kind of a romance. It's kind of a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know what I had. So I entered a novel contest in the UK for women writers who are unpublished. And I won that contest.
When did that happen?
That was in 2013. And I had this manuscript. I wasn't sure what it was. And winning that novel contest really sort of buoyed me. It made me realize, I think I can do this. I don't do it well yet. I haven't practiced it. I don't know the art of it yet. I haven't studied it. I haven't done enough of it, but I think I can do it. So
what did you actually send them? Did you send them like an early draft or where?
Well, for the contest, you had to send them the first, I think it was 20 pages. And then they did a long list of people and got the entire manuscript, which was judged by a jury of various literary people, agents. And
that alone
so simultaneously, I had this manuscript and thought, well, in doing some research, I realized I probably need an agent to get published.
Right.
And so I wasn't interested in self-publishing. I had been a blogger for a little while, and it involved a lot of time on my computer, which I was already spending because I was writing, and I didn't want the added burden of marketing my own work on top of writing my own work. So I entered the contest, and at the same time sent the manuscript to some agents, and sort of simultaneously won the contest. One of the agent judges wanted to represent me, but also an agent from New York wanted to represent me.
Oh my gosh.
And I had found him by looking at books that were kind of similar in the quirkiness of the way it was written. Yes. And I loved this book called The Dog Stars by Peter Heller. And I looked into who his agent was, approached his agent, sent them a few pages. They asked for the whole manuscript, and then they asked if they could represent me after we had a big discussion on the phone. And so I didn't ever, interestingly enough, get that manuscript published. Despite the success of that manuscript, it was still, as I said, not quite a mystery, not quite a romance. It didn't really fit a genre. And as I've discovered now, a genre is quite important to the marketing of a book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There are magazines specifically geared to talk about mystery books, and websites about thrillers, and it's all the system seems to be set up around genres. It's how books are sold.
Agents seem to know, and they have to know where to place something
That's right.
in this
And
place. It has to have a home. It has to
that's
fit
correct.
something. Right.
Exactly. And so he couldn't find a home for it, partly because we got a lot of great responses from publishers about the writing, but they didn't know where it fit. And so we shelved that manuscript because I, again, didn't want to self-publish at the time. And I really loved writing novels. And that was all I really wanted to focus on. And so Gracie came back to me, and Gracie's Kiss was a screenplay that you know well.
Yes, it was. I remember going location scouting for you
Yes.
for that film and finding these gorgeous little towns. And I just, yeah, I so remember the second I read about Gracie, I thought, oh, I can't believe this. It's really there.
Yeah, so this is a screenplay from 2 decades ago that you were interested in, that had, something about it that was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It never got made into a film, and that happens a lot with different projects, as we know. They just don't find the right people or the right legs or the right broadcaster or the right funding.
Yeah, right.
So that screenplay was shelved as well, but Gracie was a character that was very quirky. She was kind of that, I don't know if you remember her love of roadkill, making little taxidermy friends out of her. She's a very strange character.
Yeah.
So, but she hung around in the fringes of my brain, and I really liked her. And yet I knew she couldn't anchor a novel because she was too strange, but I thought she could be a periphery character in a novel.
Yeah.
And so that started me thinking about another novel, and the town of Elgin. Lots of the little elements from Gracie's Kiss, the screenplay, came into the novel, and then I came up with a whole new central character, and her story began to be woven into it, and it became Dark August. And my agent was able to sell Dark August.
So tell me when you started writing Dark August. When did you start this novel?
I would say it was about 2015, 16. Took about 4 years.
4 years.
To get it to publication date.
Now,
so
what's your writing process like? So for 4 years, how did you go about your day-to-day novel writing process?
Quite sporadically at first. I have to say my process has evolved quite a bit. At first, I would write in great spurts of inspiration, and I would get right into the novel and the story, and I would be exploring it, and then sort of making cue cards and trying to figure out where I was headed. And it was a bit all over the place, but then it started to become more daily. At times, I sort of had these moments because other projects would come along from my regular work or life or distraction. Also, writing's a funny thing. Even though you love it, it's something that isn't always easy to come to every day.
Right. Right.
It's sometimes the easy path is what we take, which is, I think I'll just do the laundry, go get the groceries, watch some Netflix, and there's the day.
Hope that things gestate a little bit.
They do, and there's a lot of rumination for sure in my process.
Yeah.
I love to walk and think through plot points. If I'm often stuck on something, because I really do like to make sure that every character's actions are motivated and really make sense for that person, or that the plot, if it's complex, the intricacies of it make sense in the context of everything else. And so sometimes there's like a knot in your plot, so to speak, and you have to untangle it.
Yes, right.
And in untangling it, often you pull other strings out of other parts of the plot, and then you've got to make sure you have this big picture. So that started me on a process of cue carding out my entire novel into the 3. I still use screenplay structures with 3 acts.
I found a lot of screenplay in the writing of Dark August, and which actually made it stronger, gave it an edge, and gave it a uniqueness.
Oh, thank you.
I really found that it came out for me. And I thought, well, this is so interesting because her past is really influencing her present. And that was so important, that all the skills you'd honed through this other medium had really found a home here in a different way that really benefited the book. And it was a complex structure. It was a complex story. And I could just wonder, okay, what is her office just papered with recipe cards? Like, what is going on to enable this to happen?
You say that, you say that in jest, but I will show you something. I will just rotate my computer just for one moment to show you book 3, which is in the works right now.
3. Oh my gosh.
That's book 3.
God. That's amazing. I imagine that.
Yes.
I necessarily imagine the colors. This is fantastic.
Well, the colors are important to me.
Okay, very important.
Yeah.
Well, no, for sure. So, okay, let's jump a little bit now. Dark August has been published now for well over a year. And let me ask you, were you surprised by the reception, like the amazing reception you got to this book?
Oh, very much so.
Really?
Very much so.
Okay.
I know there are a lot of books. As soon as I got into the book world a little bit, I realized every Tuesday there's a bunch of books coming out.
Yes.
Every week.
Like the volume of books, right?
It was also a pandemic, and so people weren't in stores looking at your cover, which I love my cover. It's beautiful. It's behind me. I shouldn't even have to hold up the book, but
no, do. This is fantastic. The cover.
But all of those factors kind of were there. And so I didn't have any real expectations. Plus it was my first novel. I didn't have a lot of expectations. I don't think the publishers necessarily did either, because they're just supporting a voice they like. They know I'm a first-time writer. It's my debut. They're going to do what they can. They were very supportive and very excited about it. And send
you on a book tour.
They basically did a virtual book tour, which was podcasts and some meetups with other writers and various Facebook Live events. And I did a virtual book launch from my kitchen. We called it a kitchen party. And I had friends and a couple of actor friends act out one of the chapters. And we did some recipes that were, riffing off the Dark August theme. And so it was fun. And I really hadn't expected anything. As I said, I had no expectations because it was my first time through. So I just wanted it to get a little bit of traction and people to like it. And I didn't